Hi, my name is Vaish Krishnamurthy, and today in this webinar, I'm going to talk about being a woman in computer science or software, mostly tech-related industries, and how we can thrive and also stay motivated in these industries. So, just to give you a little bit of background about myself, who I am, I'm just going to talk about myself and give you a little bit of window into how I got into computer science. So when I was in fourth grade, I did extremely well in mathematics, and one of the teachers put this idea into my mother's head that I'm very good and that I could try to get into sixth grade directly from fourth grade. My mom, obviously, all moms think their kids are great, so my mom obviously thought that I was this, really smart, mathematically intelligent person, and did that actually. Put me directly in sixth grade. I had to get through entrance exams. This was back in India, where many of the grades have entrance exams, especially if you're changing schools. So she had me try out for the sixth grade, and I got in. So I never did my fifth grade. So I was always the youngest in my class, which kind of has its advantages and disadvantages. One of the disadvantages I would say is I was certainly somewhat immature for my class, and I was picked upon quite a bit for being the child, the youngest, all of those things. But it was fun. Because of skipping that grade, I started my bachelor's in electronics and telecommunication at 16. And sort of want to back up a little bit here. I have been bullied, particularly, I changed 13 schools through my, I guess 11 grades because I skipped a grade. So it taught me a lot, but my final, my high school years, my junior and senior years of high school were very tough because I was in the school where there were a lot of wealthy kids, and I wasn't a wealthy kid. So and because I changed schools, my English wasn't very good. One of the girls who had very good English used to constantly pick up on the mistakes I would make grammatically, or using incorrect words, which I still do, both of them. And it was very hard. So I remember thinking to myself that I'm going to read a lot of books and improve upon my English. So I've always had this attitude of, if somebody says I can't do something, then I have to try it. I have to do it. And I think that fighting spirit is good, especially being a woman in computer science. Just having the attitude of, if somebody tells you, hey, don't do that, you actually want to go about and say, actually, I'm going to try that. I mean, how hard can that be? It's good. Trying to almost see the other side of bullying, how that we can turn that into a positive thing. So I got to thank that girl, wherever she is. She certainly helped me have this love for reading. I became a voracious reader, and I read thousands of novels. And the fact that I'm able to write articles today is because I focused so much on reading and writing back at that time. Because I started my bachelor's early, I got a full ride to do my Ph.D. in electrical engineering at University of California, Riverside at 20. So I did my bachelor's in India and got on a plane, got into United States, which I think is an amazing country full of opportunities. And I was super excited to get here and see what this new world has to offer. And I'd never been outside India, so it was awesome for me to do that. But I didn't finish my PhD. I'm what's called as an ABD, which means you're all but dissertation. So I got through my written exams, grueling 6-hour written exam on 6 different subjects, and then my oral exam. But I was 3 years in, and I sort of didn't see myself being in academics. So I decided to leave my PhD and move into industry, where I sort of wanted to see what was some of the real applications of what I was learning and doing. So I moved to Seattle, where I met my husband, so that's why I moved to Seattle. I did a brief stint at Microsoft, but my real job was at University of Washington. I was what I call as a one-woman show. I did everything at the clinical trials because they were very short staffed, so they let me do everything. So we were trying to put up these websites for clinical trials all over the United States and Canada. So I would talk to these nurses and collect requirements on how this site should look and act and what the various fields would do. And then after that, go on to, doing the actual software, which I did in Perl and Mason. And then the backend, I was never exposed to databases prior to that job, but I picked up a lot about databases. I set up the databases, I created the tables. So I learned a lot. I did project management, I did the testing for these websites myself. And then when there was a problem, the nurses from the various sites would call me. So I was customer support as well. It was an amazing job that exposed me to various aspects, both technical and I would say project management. And once I got to a point where I wasn't really learning more in that job, I was looking for a change, something to challenge myself. And voice over IP was huge at that time, and so I applied to Vonage, and I was very lucky enough to get this job at Vonage. And I have very interesting stories about Vonage, which I'll tell you as you go, but I'll sort of give you a preview of what Vonage was. It was this amazing up-and-coming company, melting pot of people from all over the globe. Indians. My boss was from Czech. We had Russians. We had people from all over the United States, Texas, New Jersey, Arizona. And it was a team of database administrators. And I was the only woman in a team of 10 guys. And my boss and these guys, very interesting. Like I said, as we go along, I'll tell you a lot of stories about how the job was and what I learned, including my first day of lunch when I was still leading and they all left. And I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, that's strange. So should I now like stop eating my lunch halfway through and leave with the guys just to fit in, or should I like stay back and finish my lunch? And they didn't even say a word. They just like all finished their lunch and left the table. I actually ended up staying and finishing my lunch because I hate wasting food. But great job, excellent career growth for me. And then we moved to Pittsburgh for my husband's job. And we are actually currently in Pittsburgh, and I worked at a company called as Precision Therapeutics, where we were doing amazing work for cancer people. I've recently been hit with cancer in my family as well, and I'm very proud of the 6.5 years I spent at Precision Therapeutics helping cancer patients. At that position, I was the head of IT and software, and we did amazing things trying to help cancer patients. I actually personally and single-handedly changed the algorithm that we use to predict whether a drug would work for a patient or not. Basically, this chemotherapy drug, chemotherapy is poison, and it's just a guesswork. Nobody knows which chemotherapy will work on a patient. And we were trying to take the guesswork out of the game and using statistical methods to figure out whether a patient would respond to a drug or not, and provide this report to the doctors so they can make, decisions like, let's say we would typically try like anywhere between 6 to 12 drugs, and sometimes even a report like none of the drugs work on this patient. So the doctors could go tell the patients like, don't go through chemotherapy, don't reduce your quality of living, and, go live whatever is the rest of your life. Even decisions like that, which is very helpful for the patient and the family as well. So very proud of my work there. And finally, I always had this entrepreneurial thing, and I wanted to start a company, and my brother was a successful entrepreneur, so I wanted to follow his footsteps too. So I started a robotics company here in Pittsburgh, where there is an amazing environment, amazing setup for entrepreneurs, especially in robotics, to thrive. So I started a company called as CleanRobotics, where I, along with a bunch of CME students and a professor, we invented a smart trash can that would automatically separate recyclables versus landfill waste. So basically, think about your trash can being replaced with a smart trash can. So you throw your trash in, and it takes a picture of the trash and uses computer vision, and really cool machine learning algorithms to figure out what is recyclable and what is not recyclable. We just had an initial prototype. Unfortunately, I couldn't raise any money for the company, so I kind of left. Right now, I'm mentoring people, and I'm sort of working on my own technical development, and we're also in the process of going to Singapore for a year. So I just have a month more before we head over to Singapore. So that's sort of where I am personally. And like I said, yeah, I'm taking a machine learning course online, which I'm totally enjoying. So the goals of this talk are, I'm here to help you, probably give you a vision, not a vision, but probably give you some idea of what it was for me to be a woman in software and the technology arena. And maybe some of the things that I say might help you, guide you, give you some optimism, gives you maybe more like a pep talk. I don't know. But yeah, I'm a friend, and you could always reach out to me. So I really do want to motivate you by saying that women can do well in computer science and technology. And there are so many positives. People often say, oh, there are so few women in computer science. And I say, that is great. That's actually going to work out for you. And here is my most recent story to prove that to you. So I'm trying to find jobs in Singapore, so I can work there while we are there for a year. And there was a talk recently at CMU by the chief product officer from a very highly regarded technology company. And I go to this talk, and I am amongst about 100 other guys. There were maybe, I always count the number of people who show up for these talks, just to see what sort of ratio that shows up to these tech talks. It was a great talk. It was a fantastic talk, actually. So I showed for the talk. There were maybe like 10 women in the audience, and about 90 to 100 guys. I asked a question at the talk, which the chief product officer was very nice to take my question and answer the question. So right after the talk gets over, that company is actually one of the companies on my list. I would love to join that company. So I find his email online, and I write to him, and I introduce myself as, hi, I am the Indian woman at your talk. And guess what? I mean, he responded back to me. I'm sure he would have responded back to anybody. But the point is, it was so easy for me to single out myself. And I remember thinking, if I was a guy in the talk, what would I say? And I actually think I was probably the only Indian woman in the talk. What would I say? I was one of the guys in your talk, just like the rest of the 89 or 99 guys in your talk. We have an undue advantage that we could use, if only people would see the other side to this. Being less in number means people remember you. Being less in number means people want to include you. Being less in number means less people you're fighting against for a position. So there is so much positivity in this. So you can totally use this to your advantage. Like I did in that talk, when you reach out to somebody. So look at the positive side of being less in number. I see a lot of negative press about women in technology, but once again, through this talk, I want to drive to you the positives of being the minority, right? This talk is not an advice. I hate advising people, except probably my 40-year-old. But I hate advising people. But again, it's just more like showing you what my life has been. Somebody who has been in your shoes. If you're maybe just starting your career, here is the window of, what 10 years or 12 years into someone's career has been. So here's my first thing. It is very difficult to know what you want or what you want to be at 18. So you're probably in your undergrad, and you're trying to figure out your major, you're trying to figure out what you want to do. I would actually expand this out and say it's difficult to know what you want to be at 35, which I am. I mean, I'm like, I've started the company, I was the head of IT and software. Like, what do I do now? I mean, what is my calling? We're not Simone Biles. I mean, we're not the world famous gymnast who knew, I don't know, at 10 maybe that she wanted to be a gymnast. We're not that lucky. So the good news is, you can figure it out as you go. You can try various things and you can figure out what you love. All these different jobs that I did exposed me to one, what I like to do, two, what I love to do, three, what I'm good at, four, what I'm not good at, and five, what I hate to do. And there is some correlation between the like, love, and what I'm good at, and there's some correlation between what I hate and what I'm not good at, as you can imagine. But give it time. Give it time. Don't expect to know, like I said, in your late teens or in your early 20s, what you want to be or what you can do or what you might be good at. Sometimes you grow and things change, your perspectives change, and perspectives change on your environment, perspectives change on what you're exposed to. I honestly, solidly believe that if you're constantly exposed to the fact that women can do things, that gets set in your head and you think that you can do certain things. And if you're constantly exposed to motivating people, reading books written by women like Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, books like that, you're constantly in an environment where you feel like you can do certain things. So surround yourself with good thoughts and motivating thoughts, and I'm telling you, you're going to have a blast in your career like I did. The thing with computer science is you can't go wrong with it. There is so much need. There are so many jobs. You keep looking at all these job listings, like which field has the most jobs, most well-paying jobs. And I'm not saying money is everything. Certainly some people, want to do music or arts or sports. They're extremely good at it and it's well-paying if you get to the top. But that's a very small percentage. I'm sure you've heard people say, I mean, how many Michael Phillips are there? How many Simone Biles are there? It's very hard to compete in these fields. And unless you're really the best of the best, it's very hard to get that sort of power and popularity. Whereas in computer science, there are so many startups that are doing well, and so many women who are, even in who joined Google at the early stage or something, and they're millionaires, Microsoft or Amazon or Facebook, and they're doing so well. So even if you don't have to be at the top in the level of Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff from Amazon, I mean, you can still have a really good life with computer science, and it's only expanding. Computer science sort of teeters on robotics and self-driving cars and where the world is going towards, with the self-driving cars from Tesla and the SpaceX, all of that, they all need computer science. They all need data people with some good analytical mathematical background. And I think women, we do well in most of the fields that we touch, actually, because we don't let things slip through the cracks, which I think is very important in a job. People who are organized, people who are dedicated, people who can juggle multiple things, which I'm telling you, women can do. We are moms. We are, juggling constantly between, driving our kids to various activities, and when you're growing up, babysitting, and doing sports, and doing, camps, and doing well in school. We are good at doing multiple things, and all of those tactics, all of those skills are going to come in extremely handy when you get to a job, I promise you. But the bottom line is, you cannot go wrong with computer science. You're definitely going to get a job in your life, always. So I would say go with computer science. You live your life once. Don't let fear rule it. And this is something I actually tell myself. I'm scared of things all the time, and my 4-year-old is scared of things all the time too. We're all afraid. But we live our life once, and if constantly fear is going to stop us from doing things, we miss out on so much fun. And this is not a direct analogy, but I'm saying this because I'm sure everybody knows who this person is and probably can relate to it. But let's say, Prince William, that's Prince William, right? Yeah, Prince William. And his wife, Kate. Let's say Kate was afraid of public speaking. She was afraid of what life could be as princess, which is a dream job. Everybody wants to be a princess, right? Probably not, but many of us want to be a princess. It's definitely a girl's dream. It's our dream job to be a princess, but we're afraid. We're afraid to stand in front of so many people, to live your life in public every single day, to be photographed everywhere you go, to be accompanied by bodyguards everywhere you go, and you don't have a single moment of peace, and what you say is being measured, what you do is being measured by everybody. It's a tough job. But if she let fear rule it and so didn't go for it, I mean, what would she be today? Nobody would know her. She would not be in the history books. I mean, she would be nobody. So she probably said to herself, if she was afraid of any of those things, like, I am not going to let fear rule my life. I'm going to be a princess. I'm going to live in the lives of people, right? I'm exaggerating to prove a point, and I always tend to exaggerate to prove my point. But whittle that down. We're not trying to be princesses, but if we let fear rule us, we can, and not go into computer science or technology or mathematics, we will lose out. And we honestly could make history. I mean, maybe people will look at the history and say, in the 20th century and in the 21st century, there were so many women going into technology, and these women, this, and this, would always be in the history as, the pioneers of women who could get into technology and believed in it. We could be that. We could be the pioneers, seriously. And so we need more and more of you to step outside the fear and get into these fields and do well in these fields, which I honestly believe you could do. If you feel like you've hit rock bottom, good news. There is only one way, and it is up. And honestly, I mean, even through the fact that I'm looking for jobs in Singapore, we're moving there, it's not easy. It's not easy looking for jobs, trying to find your right fit, trying to find the right job. But, I tell myself there is only one way, and it is up. I got to go up from here. And again, I'm in the minority, so it's probably easier for me to find a job compared to the other people. So always pick yourself up, and you can go up. And with the help and support of mentors and well-wishers, you can get up there. No one can know everything. It's impossible. I would not believe it. Even those people who answer all the weird questions in Jeopardy, you can't know everything. It's just impossible. So ask questions. And the reason why I say no one can know everything is, if you feel like you're being bullied by someone, if you feel like somebody is threatening is too strong of a word, but if somebody is scaring you, if somebody is making you feel like a fool, either in college or at a job, tell yourself, probably this person is insecure. No one can know everything. And I'm going to say this story. I hope it's helpful. So when I joined Vonage with a team of 10 guys, and let me tell you, towards the end, I absolutely had a great relationship with these guys. My work would be a blast. Going in and all the stuff these guys would say, and I would have to look up Urban Dictionary because, I kind of didn't have the sort of the background growing up in the US and watching all these TV shows. So I would miss a lot of their humor. So in the end, it was a blast. But when I first started, I was the only woman in this team, and they all didn't know my background. I had a technical interview, and in the technical interview, my boss and one of the guys from the team interviewed me, and I was doing pull coding on the board, and it was a great interview. And at one point, this guy from my team and my boss, they ran out of questions to ask me. My boss was like, "That's it, you're done?" He looked at the guy and said, "That's it, you're done? You have no more questions?" And he's like, "No, I asked all the questions I could think of." And he's like, "Great." And my boss actually did something that's pretty unheard of. He made a job offer for me right in that interview. Right then and there, he's like, "We like you, I want to make you an offer," which was totally unprepared for. But so anyways, I had a really technical interview. So it's not like they interviewed me and they didn't know my technical skill set. So my first, let's say, a month of the job used to be like this. I would go in and one of the guys would suddenly print something, SQL query, and across the cubicle, he would hand it over to me and say, "Hey, Vaish, what do you think is wrong with this query?" And it's not that he didn't know the answer. He's just testing me. And I would look at the query and I would get very nervous. I would be sweating bullets and I'm like, "Oh my God, I need to figure out what is wrong with this." Right? And I generally have anxiety. So put me on a spot, I have more anxiety now. And he would be like, and I would look at it and tell him what I thought was wrong with it. And he's like, "Yeah, that is correct." And he'd almost be like surprised that I gave the correct answer. It was just a totally weird interaction. And many of them, at least 3 or 4 of them, would constantly do this to me. And every single time I remember getting the answer right. Sometimes it was tricky, sometimes it was easy. And then at one point, especially this one guy who would often do this, he came to me and he said, "What's your background?" And I was like, "Well," I actually didn't tell him I went for my Ph.D. I said, "Well, I'm a master's in electrical engineering," in a very timid way. He said, "What? You're a master's?" He hadn't even done his bachelor's, but he was a very smart cookie, super smart cookie. I really respected him a lot. And I thought this guy knew everything. I mean, he was like a really smart cookie. He was very well regarded within the database team, one of the best database administrators, hands down in that team, very good hacker. And when I found out that, he was a college dropout and he suddenly had this total respect for me because I did my master's, I was like, I guess no one can know everything. I mean, here I thought he was a really, smart guy, and I mean, he hadn't even finished his bachelor's. By the way, nothing wrong with it. Like I said, he was a total smart cookie, total amazing hacker. But the more you learn about people, the more it becomes apparent to you that not everybody is who they project themselves to be. So if you're being bullied by somebody at work, I mean, I didn't even feel like this person actually bullied me. He just really wanted to be like, here's the first woman in this group. And people generally tend to think, I mean, actually, you know what, to be honest, I would say he probably would have done that to anybody. Even if it was a guy in the team, I'm sure that's how they would have treated that person. But sometimes when somebody is in that position, women tend to think like, are these people doing this to me because I'm a woman? And honestly, after some other guy joined the team, I saw all these guys doing that to that other person. Like, it's almost like making sure that this person is up to their standard. Like, they take a month, do this to the people, and they're like, oh, they're good enough. So they're like one of us. So I sort of became one of them. I never did it to anybody else because I thought that was very rude and brutal. Women don't do these sort of things, but men do this all the time. And the thing is, men do this to everybody, regardless of whether you're a woman or a man. And I actually appreciate that. I want to be treated like them. I mean, don't treat me softly because I'm a woman. I mean, treat me the same brutal way that you would treat a man. I mean, treat me as one of the guys. I mean, I can stand up to that. So when something happens to you, just for a second think, are they doing this to you? Are they doing this to everybody? So I sometimes read some articles written by women, and sometimes honestly there is definitely harassment aspect, so I'm not saying there is no harassment aspect, and sexual harassment is something I will absolutely not tolerate, so I'm not talking about that aspect. But sometimes when there is harassment, look deep inside to see if truly it is something that they're doing because you're a woman, or take that factor out and think, are the guys just treating you as one of the guys? And things will be easy from there. Sheryl Sandberg talks about is leaning in within a community, within your own sort of community of women. And if you have read the book, you'll probably agree with me. It's an amazing book about how you can lean into the community of women in your industry, particularly women. She mostly talks about women. And that's good, because when you talk to other women, like my previous example of when I was in that company and talking to other women, it helps you realize, are other women in other teams going through similar things? Is this a common thing, or am I alone in this experience? And if I'm alone in that experience, I'll tell you a few things how you can handle it. But there are two sets. One is this an experience that somebody else has had? So when you have an experience, just a weird experience, right? Let's take this example. You go into your team, people are constantly like putting you on the spot, asking you things, and you feel very rattled. It's an experience. It's a weird experience for sure. And maybe this is your first job, maybe this is your second job, but you're very rattled and you feel afraid even to go to work, show up every day, and you're like, I don't know who's going to put me on the spot today, right? When you have an experience like that, the first thing you need to do is talk to people, okay? Figure out, is this experience that other people have had, other people like me have had, or is this an experience that I'm unique in experiencing at this company? So break the problem down into, is this something known or is this something unknown? If it's something known, could you then ask those women, how did you deal with it? What happened? Learn from their experiences. They can give you clues. People can talk to you about things. That's a great way to deal with it. So you're not trying to figure this out all by yourself. That's sort of where I think the lean in comes from. Because certain things people can teach you at school. There are certain things you can only learn and practice. So women who are more experienced than you, who are older than you, can help you with those things. And Sheryl Sandberg has a lot of tips about those sort of things, because she has often found herself in situations where she's alone. She's a woman and they're only guys. She couldn't even find a restroom. I mean, she talks about, going to this VC meeting, and the guy didn't even know where the women's restroom was because they hardly had any women there. And that's one way, an easy way to deal with something that you've, not experienced, but somebody else can help you. And what that can give you is an avenue to find a mentor. As you talk to various women and collect these data points, you form friendships, you form trust. Trust is a very important thing, people. You have to form those relationships. You have to form that trust. Maybe you can even form groups. Once you find that, you can tell the women, like, Have you had other people come and talk to you about these things? Could we have support groups? Can we set up a support group where, all the women, we all just get together, have an informal lunch and talk about our issues? Those sort of things can come in so handy. Those could be your lifelong tools, both for you to lean in and then pass it on for the future women. Maybe you could take on those roles. That's what we need to do to support each other, to bring each other up. Now, the other aspect, if you find yourself in a situation where you're all alone, at least you can't find anybody else within the company going through these things. Here are some tools. Obviously, Google is your friend. LinkedIn, for workplace things, there are a ton of articles on LinkedIn. I love reading the LinkedIn articles. Such a treasure for practical advice on what to do, how to behave. I often find people writing stuff about their failure. I read about the social media. I'm not on Facebook. But there's this aspect of people, going on Facebook and only posting happy pictures about the places that they have traveled to, or, their engagement, their wedding. It's almost as if life is always great, right? But then this guy had written saying on Google, so many people searching about irritable bowel syndrome, but you don't see anyone posting on Facebook saying they're suffering from irritable bowel syndrome. On the flip side, on the other hand, LinkedIn has a lot of people posting about their failures. Somehow, when it comes to professional life, people have found the courage to step up and share articles like, how did their interview go and what a difficult time they had at their interview. They ended up with a migraine, talking to 4 different people and interviewing all day and not hearing back from the recruiter for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. People post about their failures, post about their difficult experience all the time on LinkedIn, even on Medium. Medium is amazing. I actually learned about Medium when an amazing lady came here. She was one of the early founders of the cable company, AOL. And so I picked up from people. She said she follows LinkedIn. She follows Medium. She loves Medium. And that's actually how I signed up on Medium. It can be pretty addictive. It can be very time consuming too. So those things can teach you when you're alone in a situation. Those things can teach you tips. And if you go past that, you're neither able to find this on LinkedIn. People can be private. People might have had that experience, but they may not be willing to share it publicly. So as you go through these support groups, when you establish that trust, which is a very important word, with the mentor or with the person, that's the person you want to give a call because you trust the person to tell you. And I have a mentor, an amazing mentor. She was my boss at Precision Therapeutics. And she's my trusted mentor. When I have a problem or issue that I think even my husband can't relate to it, I give her a call and I'm like, I want to tell you something in private, in confidence. And I feel like I have a lending ear. And she's such a wise woman. She would always say, yeah, I've never been in that boat, but if I were you, this is what I would do. And that is amazing. Just to hear that voice, just to hear that comforting voice, almost like your mom, your work mom, is pretty amazing. So form the bonds in your workplace. Find the women that you can trust, find the mentors. And when you find the mentors, it's a tricky process, but I honestly believe when you have these relationships, I never, with my ex-boss Laurie, I never shook hands with her and said, you're my mentor, I'm your mentee. It was never that formal, but it just evolves. It's this amazing relationship that just evolves over a period of time when you have this trust. And when Laurie trusted me, both at work, we would share a lot of confident things with each other, very private things with each other. And it was amazing. I would like to quote one last story from Sheryl Sandberg in the book Lean In about mentors. So Sheryl is working at Google And there is this younger woman who's apparently very smart, very successful, and Cheryl thinks of her as her mentee. As Cheryl thought of herself as the mentor, probably because how much she's helping her with practical trips. And Cheryl said she had a very vested interest in this woman's career. She often, like when there were opportunities, she would point this woman and try to groom her into those opportunities. And when they were sitting at a meeting or a discussion, this younger woman remarks that she would love to have a mentor. Cheryl is just shocked because all along, she thought that, she was her mentor. So Cheryl, taken aback by this younger woman saying that she was on the lookout for a mentor and she's never found a mentor, says, how do you define a mentor? What does it mean for you to have a mentor? And the younger woman remarks, somebody who would spend an hour with me each week. And Cheryl thinks, honey, that's a shrink, not a mentor. That is so classic. I've been a mentor and I've been a mentee. And let me tell you, the 1 hour a week is a lot of time commitment. Neither my mentors have spent an hour with me, and nor have I spent an hour with my mentees. So don't have unfair expectations. That's not how a mentor-mentee relationship works. They are there, but they have a family too. They have a career too. They have a life too. So don't expect an hour of anybody's time. Be grateful if somebody is grooming you for your job, if somebody is reaching out to you and saying, hey, I saw this job opportunity and I thought of you. They are your mentors. They may not be spending an hour with you, but they are your mentors. They're looking out for you. I have this other woman, Gail. I just met her when she was trying to sell something to us, and we just really connected. And we've always, met for coffee or lunch. She's taken me out for lunch or coffee many, many times. And now that I'm looking for a job in Singapore, whenever she goes to these events, she's always telling people like, hey, I have this friend looking for an opportunity in Singapore. And she would always send me these tips. That's a mentor, that's a well-wisher. And that's amazing. I'm lucky enough to have these people. But again, it's a trust, it's a click, and you will find those people. Since I already talked about the lean on and flip the 2 slides, I apologize. I'm going to just go over this slide. I once saw this sticker. This may not be the exact words, I'm not sure. But I was driving behind this car and the sticker said, well-behaved women seldom make mystery. And I thought, I was cracking up at first. And then once I finished laughing about it, I thought about it. And I thought, man, that is so true. I would like to tweak this saying or this bumper sticker thing a little bit and say that women who follow the norm seldom make history. And the only reason I want to tweak this thing, this well-behaved women seldom make history seems like a bumper sticker that would have worked super well back in the 50s or the 60s, if you know what I mean, where women were asking for equal rights, or women were, colored women wanted to use the same bathroom, or things like that. I think the well-behaved women was more appropriate at that point when women had sort of these defined boundaries and priorities and defined things that they could do and not do, that would call them as this sort of well-behaved women, women from respected family. So this bumper sticker would have totally worked in the 50s and 60s, and people can relate to it. And I definitely don't want to tell my 4-year-old that well-behaved women seldom make history, because yeah, that would totally make her go nuts. So I don't want her to behave well, and well-behaved changes with the decades, changes with generations, because how you define this, behavior, good behavior is very different. So I define well-behaved or good behavior in a very different way in this century. So I'm going to tweak this and say, women who follow the norm seldom make history. Even this I'm not completely happy with, but I hope you can follow my thought process on this. So if the norm is that women have to become mostly teachers or biology majors, that's the norm. And people say, you can't really go into technology. You can't really have a successful startup, a tech startup, a robotic startup. You can't, go to the moon. Why not? I mean, I say challenge it. If somebody tells you you can't go to the moon, challenge that norm. And actually, I'm suddenly reminded of this story. I hadn't even thought about this story for so many years. This whole moon thing reminds me of this story. So, for a very long time, my dream was to go to the moon. My dream was to actually study the stars because the wonderful days before smartphone and tablets, I used to love gazing at the sky. I used to love stars. This was way before I found out that I'm totally claustrophobic. But anyways, so then I was reading about all these amazing things that this was back when I was in India. United States was doing about sending people to the moon and space. And I was following the Indian rocket, the Indian space, the government funded space. I even forget its name. It's horrible. I'm terrible with names. The government funded space programs. I found out the email address, and email wasn't even that prevalent. This was at least 20 years ago, when I was in my probably 17, 18, just doing my probably my sophomore year in undergrad. I found out this email address of this space program guy because we went to visit a space program and I got so excited. It was a very tiny rocket in terms of all rockets go. It was a tiny rocket that India was launching, but it was our trip out, our field trip to this space program in college. And I then went to their website and looked up this guy's information. He was actually one of like the top level. He's like the head of NASA. Okay, so head of the Indian space program, and I sent him an email. I say, hi, introduce myself, whatever, and say, how come India is not sending people to the moon? And I, as a woman, would love to get on a rocket and go to the space. And this amazing guy actually responded back to me and said, it takes a lot of money to put people in space. So, my dear girl, as much as I love your enthusiasm to want to go into the space, he said, India doesn't have that much in funds to send people into space. I appreciated his response, and thank God I didn't work on that goal because with me being so claustrophobic, that would not have panned out so well. But I say this story to say that following the norm, and even being afraid to send those emails, don't be afraid. You're never going to make history if you don't try, right? So try to break out of the shell. Do crazy things once in a while, and I mean not totally crazy, but the good crazy things, and people respond, and then you find out, oh well, I guess India is not sending people to the space because it's very expensive and we don't have the money allocated for the space program. But break the norm. If the norm says only 50% of women can be in technology, let's break the norm. Let's actually flip it. Let's send more men to become teachers, and let's have more women in technology. Let's have more women in management. Let's have more women being entrepreneurs. That's how we can make history. We can't sit around and follow the norm at all. So sort of going off of my crazy ideas, right? If you send that email, if you send an email like I did, and the guy responds back saying, you can't waste my time. That was wrong of you to send the email or something like that. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. I mean, but it's important to learn from it. I always say this: know your time and place, to have some sense, whether you're sending an email or whether you're going to apply for a job that you think is totally out of your league, have some sense of time and place. Just don't randomly do things. I'm a data driven person. I always try to do things in a data driven analytical manner. Even when I sort of decided to leave my startup, it was a very data driven decision. There was no money in recycling. So it's going to be hard to have this startup at this point in time. Maybe 10 years down the line, when recycling is more of a profitable business within the United States, this concept would make sense. But decisions have to be data driven. Even this, smaller decisions, try to see if you can make data driven decisions. And if you make a mistake, it's okay. Learn from it. If you put your hand in the fire, that's fine. The bad thing would be if you continue to put your hand in the fire again and again. What is that thing? Trying to repeat the same experiment again and again and expecting different results is stupid. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's one of the things I hate. I hate repeating the same thing again and again. Don't repeat your mistakes, but if you do it once, it's okay. Learn from it. If you start a business and that goes completely haywire, hey, that's fine. I did that. But learn from it. I mean, there is a lot of lessons to learn from it. So it's okay to make mistakes. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. And if you're afraid of making mistakes, I actually strongly believe it will not help you learn. If you're often afraid to do new things, if you're afraid to make mistakes, what that prevents you from doing is prevents you from expanding yourself, prevents you from doing things that are outside of your comfort zone, and it doesn't help you grow. So I think making mistakes is part of growing up. Making mistakes is part of learning. So make mistakes, but it's important to learn, right? Believe in hard work. I mean, there is luck, there is being in the right place at the right time. I totally understand. And I have been one of those people who have often found myself not having a lot of luck. I actually got a job offer in Google, but it was luck that they then moved that position from Pittsburgh to Mountain View. I mean, it's a weird story. It was like luck was against me in every turn of the way. Even though I went through 5 headache, migraine producing interviews that was tough in every single sense. Left brain, right brain, right brain, left brain, write an algorithm on the board, talk about behavioral stuff. But luck was against me. I didn't get I couldn't take the job. But hard work. I got the job offer. I got the offer letter. It was because of hard work. You can overcome luck. You can overcome not being in the right place at the right time by doing hard work. There is no substitute for hard work. Sure enough, some people can get lucky, but luck can't carry you all the way through. You can get lucky once or twice, not all the time. All the successful people, I am telling you, they probably have one thing in common. They all worked hard, incredibly hard. Do you think Mark Zuckerberg or the founders of Google, Sergey and Larry Page, Bill Clinton, any of those people got there without hard work? Can you name one person in that league that you can just say, oh, they just got there? Luck was definitely a factor. I'm not denying that. But hard work was definitely a factor. Believe in hard work. If you ever find yourself in situations, the only way you can get out of difficult situations is by working hard. Once again, I saw this somewhere, and I thought it was amazing. And once again, goes to talk about hard work. When I was in college, I remember this girl. I always got good grades, especially in math related things. One day she came to me and she said, what's your caste? It's like a subgroup of religion. And I said I was a Brahmin. And she said, oh, that's why you're intelligent, because you're a Brahmin. It's almost like saying you're Jewish, that's why you're a good banker. And I was like, what? But it was just very weird that she thought that intelligence was a static trait or it was the luck of genetic draw that somehow by having the Jewish gene or the Brahmin gene, you just became intelligent. And I wanted to tell her, I mean, okay, maybe I have some, some moderate level of intelligence definitely handed down to me with good genes. I'm not denying that. My dad is a doctor, he's very smart. But I wanted to tell her I actually did well in the exams and got good grades because I worked hard. And intelligence can go through hard work. I mean, sure, there are some geniuses out there like Einstein or Ramanujam, but even those people worked very hard to prove the theorems. They worked incredibly hard. And if moderate intelligence can grow into more moderate intelligence or higher level intelligence through hard work. So I love this statement. And I loved when I saw this. I remember thinking that how she sort of, you know, put me in this bucket and said, oh, she did well in exam because she had the, intelligent gene in her. It had nothing to do with the fact that she stayed up late, studying for her exams. Don't be silly, people. Don't disregard hard work. You can become intelligent through hard work. It's okay to say I don't know, which I think women are really good at, but don't be afraid to say I know. And here's another classic story from my Vonage days. So this boss of mine, who, if you've ever met the Eastern European people, they're very curt and to the point to your face, which I love, because you're not guessing what they're thinking. So it was my first week in the job, and this other person who had hired me, we'll just call him Calvin. So I'm not revealing any identity. So Calvin was my colleague who interviewed me, and let's call my boss Dan. Dan was my boss. So Dan, my boss, actually did technical work too. So he was programming something in Perl. And Calvin and I were standing next to my cubicle, and we were chatting about something. And Dan came to Calvin and said, hey, Calvin, you're really good at Perl. I mean, Calvin had a name for being really good at Perl until I joined the group. And he said, you're really good at Perl, Calvin. Tell me how to solve this. And then Dan told him what he was trying to work on. And Calvin said, I don't know. I don't actually think you can do it in Perl. And Dan was like, fine. And he walked away, right? I mean, I'm standing right there. A 5'10" woman, big woman standing right there. But I was actually hoping that Dan would ask me how to solve the problem, but he didn't. He's like, crap. And he just walks away from Calvin. And after he leaves, I tell Calvin, I'm like, Calvin, I actually think there's a way to do it. And he's like, really? Are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And I said, I actually know how to do it, but like, if you don't believe me, and this is how I always speak back in the day, and if you don't believe me, it's actually in the Pearl cookbook. I've seen it. I can show it to you. And he's like, oh, okay. Calvin used to pride himself for being really, mastering these books. And I actually have read these books like multiple times. Because I love learning Perl tricks. That was like one of my hobbies. So I turned the page. I actually literally knew where it was. And I showed him, and I was like, this is how you do that, and the Perl cookbook had these amazing things like, here's a problem and here's how you would solve it. So I showed to Calvin, and Calvin was like, oh, cool. And he's like, and I said, do you want to go tell Dan? And he's like, no, you go tell Dan yourself. And he was like, don't be afraid. Like, if you know this, like, which I really was thankful to Calvin for, like, not saying, like, taking the book away from me or stealing my idea and going to Dan. He was like, go tell Dan yourself. Like, it was your idea. You know how to do it. So I went to Dan and I was like, hey, Dan, you just asked Calvin for this. There's a way to do it. And you're actually in the Perl cookbook. It says how to do it too. And then Dan had this look of shock. He's like, and for like maybe 2 seconds passes by, and he looks at me and says, you're really good at Perl. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And I honestly wanted to tell Dan, like, isn't that why you hired me? You gave me a technical Perl interview, and I did well in that. So I mean, I thought you hired me because you knew I was good at Perl. But, don't be afraid to say that you know, too. And, that sort of, again, that interaction with Dan helped Dan realize that I was good at Perl. And I wasn't one to say, I know, I know, I know. So he never really knew what my level was. But those sort of events went to prove my credibility. Don't expect people to have credibility on day one. But over a period of time, when you stand up to yourself and say, I know how to solve that problem, or even like, I think I know how to solve that problem. Can I take a stab at it in a meeting, in a technical meeting, or in a group meeting, or in your team meeting? Don't be afraid to own up to it. And if you can't do it, that's fine too. You gave it your best shot. Don't think that, oh, I tried it and I couldn't do it. No, what would people think of me? People would just be amazed that you gave your honest shot at it. So it's okay. It's okay to say, I know. My 4-year-old often says, I know to do this, I know to do that. And we would ask her a question like, hey, do you know what this means? And she would be like, yes. And we would be like, okay, tell me. And she would be like, no. That 4-year-old confidence of I know, somehow we lose it along the way. So don't lose it. Keep that confidence, the 4-year-old confidence of saying like, I know this. So don't be afraid to say I know. By helping each other grow, we are growing ourselves. This is the classic sort of John Nash, if you've ever seen that movie Beautiful Mind, where it's sort of a watered down explanation of what the actual equilibrium, the Nash equilibrium is. But I love to draw the analogy that he makes in that movie to real life, where he says, by instead of trying to get this attractive woman, just, in this group of men, they always like try to like push each other down and get this attractive woman. He'll actually say like, by helping each other, we can actually get more attractive women. So the point is, if we are in a group of women, instead of trying to put each other down, if we can grow ourselves, if we can pull each other up by helping somebody else grow, we are growing ourselves. This is very true. And especially where I have noticed so many times, by helping other women grow or helping other people in the team grow, I have grown myself. And collectively, we have earned a good name and a good reputation, because people tend to collect people into a group. Like the women at CMU in computer science are really smart. People tend to generalize like that. So by helping each other come up to speed, grow, you're growing yourself. So please keep that in mind, especially women in technology. In a group setting or something, help each other so that collectively you get a good name and collectively you can grow. And people remember, oh, those women, they did so well. I mean, they earned a really good reputation. Last but not the least, I know I went over my time. I'm really sorry. Women in computer science and mathematics in itself is a startup, but one that's doing very well. It's a $1 billion industry, and we can keep growing. We can keep growing at this pace. We can have exponential, exploding exponential growth. We just had the first Fields medalist, which is the highest award in mathematics. It's like the Nobel Prize in mathematics, and women from Stanford, I believe she won it. She was the first woman to won the Fields Medal. So we're creating history. The first woman in this, the first woman in that, first woman in the Putnam, which is a prize that's given to students for solving these mathematical puzzles. I mean, everybody's coming up. It's amazing to see that. And we can keep growing. Keep yourself motivated. You can thrive in this industry, and actually you can more than thrive in this industry. Turn your negatives into positives. Look at the positive side of how you can create history tomorrow. Collectively, we can all create history tomorrow. And with that, that's my email address. You can write to me, and I would love to hear from you. And if you have anything, any issues you're dealing with, I would if you have the trust in me, which I hope you do, and write to me. If there is an issue you're struggling with, I would love to hear that, and I would love to give you any sort of confident tips, not advice, tips on maybe how to solve that, and maybe that's something I can learn from that experience too. So I would love to hear from you all, and I truly hope you enjoyed this webinar. Sorry it went long, but I definitely enjoyed talking about a lot of different things. Thank you. Adios and good luck.